Dhe të nderuar shikues, siç ju paralajmëruam, sot do zhvillojmë një bisedë me ambasadoren e Izraelit në Kosovë, Tamar, me të cilën do të bisedojmë më tepër për situatën në Izrael dhe në lindjen e mesme, po ashtu edhe për raportet e Izraelit me Kosovën, pasi që po shënohen 5 vjet të nënshkrimit të raporteve bilaterale dhe të tjera. Ambassador Ziv, good afternoon and thank you for this interview.
Good afternoon and thank you for having me over.
I would like to begin with the current situation in Israel, Ambassador. This is quite different from last year's war with Iran, or as we know it as 12-day war. So what is different now as it is longer, and what is the Israeli government's approach to the situation?
Well, yes, like as you mentioned, this war is longer. We're now on the 34th day, if I'm not mistaken. This is a war in which we're not only dealing with the Iranian terror regime, but the day after everything began, Hezbollah decided to join the war and to support its sponsor, the Iranian regime. And actually, since March 2nd, we have another front in the north, a front that we, of course, did not provoke in any way, and it was Hezbollah's decision to support the Iranians. And since then, they have been firing ceaselessly at the north of Israel. More than 4,000 of different types of missiles have been fired only by Hezbollah to Israel since March 2nd. And as you probably also know, the Houthis decided to join the war as well a few days ago, and they've also began launching missiles against Israel. So basically, I think we can say that we have a three-front war on our hands now. And, the situation, and all of these terror organizations are actually targeting civilians, whereas Israel and the United States are targeting the nuclear installments in Iran and the ballistic missile industry. Then the Iranians, the Hezbollah, and the Houthis are only or mostly targeting civilian populations, aiming cluster munitions, which are, by the way, illegal against the civilian population in Israel. And on a daily basis, we have tens, if not more, sirens from the north to the south, warning the population to go to shelter because a missile attack is about to begin.
The Israeli government and the United States, when they started the attack on Iran, initially on the first days, it was announced that they are fighting to change the regime. So they would, on the first day, the attacks killed Ayatollah Khamenei and other leaders of Iranian regime. But on the way, seems like the goals of this war changed. What is the approach now to ceasefire to be reached?
Well, I think that first of all, and the reason why the United States and Israel went to war was to avoid having a nuclear country, which is a terror regime in the Middle East, of course. And that was the main reason, to significantly weaken, hopefully dismantle Iran's nuclear capabilities, as well as the missile capabilities, because as the world sees, the Iranian regime is actually targeting not only Israel, but it has targeted 12 different countries all around Iran's borders since the war began. If we're talking about Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Cyprus, which is part of the European Union, of course, Turkey, and others. So those were the two main goals. And of course, on the way, we think that for the people of Iran and the people of the whole world, if this regime were to be toppled, it would be, I think, a new beginning for the world. But at the moment, that's not happening, and it seems that the Iranian regime have control of the inner situation. But we're, of course, very hopeful that someday soon the Iranian regime will fall.
And in relation to this, it was quite many times mentioned that there is needed support from the local population of Iran, including many protests that were being held. What is now the current situation? Are there the protests ongoing in Iran? And also, by this, I would like to mention the approach of the son of the former Shah of Iran and his approach that is supportive to removing the regime in Iran and including establishing relations with Israel.
Well, it's very hard to know what's going on in Iran now because for almost a month the internet has been turned off in Iran, and it's very difficult to get information about the interior situation at the moment. We don't know of any significant demonstrations that are going on now in Iran, but I think that's quite understandable from the part of the population that after they were so cruelly massacred and almost 40,000 Iranian civilians were murdered by the regime in a few days in January, the people of course, are, I think, afraid to go out and start doing something when war is waging in the country. And of course, I think the regime are doing their utmost in order to control the population and not let people onto the streets. But as I mentioned before, I hope that in the very near future, this reality will change and we'll see a new regime emerge in Iraq.
Ambassador, before I continue with a different topic, I would like also to ask you about the developments in the whole region of the Middle East, because considering, and while the Middle East region is quite changing in the recent years, because considering the countries that a few years ago were not part of Abraham Accords, now those countries, for example, Emirates, Qatar, and other countries, Bahrain, are on the side, if I may say, of United States and Israel in this war, while a few years ago nobody would imagine that something like this would happen. And by this, having this perspective in mind, how is this affecting the societies in each country, including Israelis, to the approach of the current developments and the changing of Middle East?
Well, as you mentioned, the Middle East is definitely changing in the last years. As you said, it began with the Abraham Accords, which were a very significant step to creating a Middle East which is different, which sees peace and prosperity and economic development in front of its eyes. I think that the countries surrounding Iran, namely those, and of course Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and probably Oman, I think we're very surprised by the fact that Iran so relentlessly attacked them and bombed them. And if the United Arab Emirates were considered a safe haven and an economic center for the region, then the Iranian attacks are doing a lot of damage in that sense. And of course, I think this is one of the reasons why they're now, they were always very strong allies of the United States. And of course, through the Abraham Accords, also the relationship with Israel has developed. But I think that experiencing the wrath of the Iranian regime and the consequences of what they're doing now has probably strengthened their stance and their opinion that the United States and Israel should continue fighting with Iran in order to significantly weaken it so that Iran will not be a threat for them as well and for the whole Gulf region.
Yes, and I would like to continue with something else, Ambassador. This year, by beginning of February, we just marked 5 years of bilateral relations in between Kosovo and Israel. Marking this milestone of 5 years, how do you see the relations between the two countries?
Well, of course, I think that the relationship between the countries is a very good one. Out of these 5 years of the relationship, unfortunately, for 2.5 years, Israel has been in war. It began on October 7th with the horrific Hamas massacre. And then, of course, the wars that ensued, and then the 12-day war with Iran, and now the epic Fury operation with Iran. So unfortunately, the relationship with Kosovo, like the relationship with other countries, wasn't able to advance as fast as we had expected at the outset. But I think that despite the fact that Israel has been in war for 2.5 years, we've done a lot in order to develop the relationship, enhance it. We signed the visa waiver agreement, which was a significant agreement which opened the free travel of Israelis and Kosovars to each other's countries, which is extremely important. We were working on enhancing the economic relationship. We're working on cultural relations, and just in last May we had the Israel Culture Week in Pristina, and we're working on academic relations, student exchange, Kosovars coming for different courses to Israel, and so on and so forth. So even despite the war, we've done a lot in these 2.5 years to enhance the relationship, and I'm sure that once the war will end, then we'll be able to do much, much more in both directions.
Considering the fact, and also that we talked about the changing of the developments in the Middle East and including the relations, there is quite new and unprecedented development, which is the establishment of a Board of Peace by the US President Trump. And founding member of that board is Kosovo as well as Israel. And the first project, if I may say, or effort of the Board of Peace is the creation of international troops that will be ruling or controlling the territory of Gaza, or let's say to shape the future of Gaza. And Kosovo announced that they are going to send Kosovo Security Forces troops there. What is Israel's approach to this development, especially with Gaza after the war?
Well, I think that it's a big thing that Kosovo is a founding member of the Peace Board, and that it decided to take part in the ISF. I think this is something that is very much appreciated by Israel and, of course, by the United States. And we extremely value Kosovo's future involvement in the ISF. At present, the Gaza Strip is kind of divided into two parts across what we call the Yellow Line. The part that is ruled by Israel at the moment and the part that is ruled by Hamas. Unfortunately, since the ceasefire with Hamas has been working relentlessly to build up its military abilities and power, so that it will be able to continue waging war against Israel. Hamas is also amassing the huge amount of humanitarian aid which has been coming into the Gaza Strip, and of course taking financial advantage of all of this, everything that is going into Gaza Strip at this point. And the 5 countries, among which Kosovo is included, which are supposed to be entering at some point into the Gaza Strip, will each have a certain area inside the Gaza Strip which they'll be responsible for. And we don't know exactly what the mandate is for the different forces from the different countries. I believe it'll be challenging because I think Hamas is not willing to, let down its arms and let others rule the Gaza Strip, but that remains to be seen. So I guess we just all have to, see how this develops and, what the mandate of Kosovo specifically will be, what the mandate of the other countries will be, and how all this will come together.
Yes, thank you, Ambassador. And with my best wishes that the war to end soon, I thank you for this interview and Hag Pesach Sameach.
Thank you very much. Chag Pesach Sameach, and I'd like to take the opportunity to wish all Kosovars of Christian faith a very happy Easter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dhe të ndërruar shikues, këtu edhe përfundojmë bisedën me ambasadoren e Izraelit në Kosovë, Tamar, dhe këtu edhe përfundojmë emisionin për sot. Ju falenderojmë për vëmendjen. Mirupafshim.